Hi, this is Guitarist Denis Taaffe, and today I'd like to take a look at the making of my 279th album called Modern Rock Guitar Vol.279 Streams. And really quickly, for those who aren't familiar with my music or my approach to music, basically I play guitar and do guitar loops done on the fly, which means as I play guitar, I have a looping pedal that records parts of what I'm playing and starts to repeat it. And then I come up with ideas that I layer on top of that. I also emulate bass on guitar. What sounds like bass is really guitar dropped an octave and then looped to give you that bass sound. And sometimes you'll hear things that sound like keyboards and so on, but it's all guitar. And it's not MIDI guitar, it's real guitar, with analog and digital effects. Okay, and real quick, let's talk about the cover. Very simple cover. It's basically just a picture. I like the colors of the picture, so I added it's a stream. There's a flower, so I added little guitars and a little likeness of me. And that's really kind of for fun, but also to recognize that it's a guitar album. And when I was younger, I had a real hard time going through albums, and seeing, was this a guitar album or featuring guitar or not, that kind of thing. That's why I also add Guitarist Denis Taaffe. I mean, if you can't figure out that that's a guitar album, then I'm not sure what else I can do. But it really used to be a problem back in the day when I was looking for guitar albums, I remember some instrumental albums, and it had some guy's name, but nothing on the cover indicating that it was a guitar album, So sometimes, I try an album, and it turns out it was disco or, terrible music that I didn't like. Okay, anyway. Now, Vol.279, I made some changes, and I tried to do that on each album. And in this particular one, I made kind of a drastic change, really. And that is I changed one of the amplifiers to a PV Classic 30 all-tube amp. And it's a small tweed amp, it has a 1x12 in it. And in this particular case, I used it on one side and then used a Albion AG40 DFX on the other side, which is also a combo amp, but it's a hybrid amp. And the Albion just has a very, very nice, smooth sound. Now, to my surprise, the PV, is a very loud amp, but it's very quiet as well. I was very pleased with that. And it can be very loud. So it'd be great for, playing out live and that kind of thing. However, what I found, it's not as smooth as the Albion at all. And that may be due to the speaker or just the fact that it's a tube amp. And so turns out that it accentuates different frequencies. And so a lot of my pattern playing comes out in the mix differently. It almost sounds brighter, but it really isn't. It's just the fact that it is a tube amp instead of a solid state amp. And you'll hear that on the tracks. It really made a difference. Now, whether you like it better or not, I'm not sure. But I'll tell you, I still love those Albion amps, because I did switch it back to 2 Albions, and the difference was striking. Just smooth everything out. I suppose I could use 2 classic 30s to get the sound, but I only had one available. So the verdict's still out, really, on that. Whether that's something I'm going to use or not. We'll see. We'll see here. Okay, well, let's get to it. Let's go track by track, and you'll immediately hear the difference. In fact, this first one, his first track is a long track. It's 11 minutes and 5 seconds. The whole album only has 7 tracks on it, so they're fairly long tracks. And it's called Groundwater. And this one really shows you what I'm talking about with the Classic 30 PV tube amp. So let's take a listen to that. And you can hear it right here, right at the beginning. And I believe it's on the left channel, is the PV. How the pattern is more pattern playing is more dynamic. Yeah. For the layman, crispy. It's a crispy sound, if you like. It's a nice sound. Don't get me wrong. It's just different. So with this track, having those chords coming out, almost like a piano, is the fact that the PV tube amp has a lot of headroom, and the chords really jump out at you. The basic idea of this track. Yeah, and that really shows you the PV Classic 30. Let's fast forward it to about the 613 mark. Let's hear that. Now by this time I've added a bass line and a lot of different patterns, and you'll see the patterns really kind of stick out. The pattern playing, repeating patterns, they stick out more than they usually would because of that amp. Is it a good thing? I don't know. It would definitely be softer with the 2 Albion amps. Not quite as dynamic. And here I tried to use some filtered sounds as well. Okay. And I suppose they're more defined. The pattern playing is more defined with the tube amp. Whereas with the Albions, it kind of gets washed out in the background and creates a nice background. So it just depends on, I guess, this is a more aggressive sound, if you like. Okay, now the second track is called Streams. And let's take a listen to that. And I really like the mood and atmosphere of this track. Definitely changing that amp out to the tube amp definitely changed my playing, affected my playing, and as a result, the song ideas too. I tried to do some guitar swells, but I really need to get that volume knob replaced because it gives you a scratchy sound. It's scratchy. Just needs to be replaced so we get a smooth swell. And you see there are those two chords, and they really come out very clearly because of that PV Classic 30. Let's fast forward that one to 531. So there I've just added some other ideas, musical ideas. I hear some backwards guitar there and layers of patterns. I really like that track. It's but notice it's so clear too, and part of that is because the Albions have an echo to them, and the PV doesn't. So it's a really clear, clean, super clear and clean sound, and it definitely lets you hear every layer, basically. And whether that's a good thing or not depends on the track, I guess. Okay, now this third one is called Floods. And it's also a long track. It's about 11 minutes long. So let's take a listen to that one. And here right away you'll notice that the droning sounds there. Definitely more aggressive sounding and much more accented than usual than previous albums. About 4-minute mark. Yeah, and you'll notice here, notice how the layers are definitely separated more. Yeah, you'll see how those patterns really stick out more than if I had used the Albions. But definitely, there's that tube amp. So it's a real clear sound. Okay, and let's fast forward that one to about 9 minutes, 19 seconds. Yeah, see how that the tube amp makes really the parts stick out more. The other thing I notice is that whether you're using single coil or humbuckers, as far as the pickups of the guitar, on the Albion doesn't make much difference really, but on the PV it makes a huge difference, and it really is set up for, to my ears, for the single coil, kind of the, the Fender Stratocaster type sound on there. Okay, now the next track is a track that I left on there because I like the musical ideas of it, and I think it's one of the first tracks I used with the PV tube amp. And it's called Erosion. It's kind of an obscure track as far as musical ideas wise. You'll hear it here. Had I to do it over again with the PV Classic 30, I had the treble EQ up a little higher than I should have, I think. So if I use that amp again, I'll definitely turn down the treble. Anyway, is this track, I almost pulled it from the album because some of the loops unfortunately got cut off one of the chords, so it gives it a really not a smooth sound at all. Let's fast forward a bit to, it's only a 4-minute track, but still, let's go to the 2-minute or 2:08. See, it almost sounds like it's skipping, and that's kind of my fault. But I really like the underlying, the low end part here. Let's hear a little bit more of that. Yeah, so it's kind of an experimental track, really. Okay, let's move on to track 5. It's called Subdivided. Okay, and let's take a listen to that one. You can definitely hear the tube amp there. definitely sounds more like a guitar than the Albion, like, especially on those chords. Okay. Alright. And let's fast forward. What I like about this track is you've got the low end here, and it goes B to D. And what I really like about it is the definitely the chords over it. Okay, and let's fast forward that a bit. See how everything is more accented and clearer, really. There's that backwards guitar. There's a swell long delay. Okay, and there you can really hear each layer very clearly. Okay, now let's move on here. And track 6 is called The Spring. Now let's take a listen to that one. And as I recall, this one is a really interesting track because it's very slow. And it's really just playing guitar. And I also use some low-end sounds I've never used before. So it worked out, I think, pretty well. Let's take a listen to that. And really, that idea came about from me just appreciating how clean the PV tube amp was. There's something to say about, just having your guitar plugged into a tube amp. Gives it a nice warm sound. Okay, and let's fast forward a little bit so you can hear this kind of bass sound that I started using. Okay, and this is a long track too. It's about 8 minutes long. But let's go to the 3:43 mark. And here what I've done is I've swelled the low end, the bass part. And that's a sound I hadn't used before. Fast forward that a little bit. 7/16. There's that pattern playing. Notice it's really clear and bright. Okay. And now the last track. And the last track is also a long track. And it's about 10 minutes and 4 seconds long. And it's called Rapids. Let's take a listen to that. As I recall, it's a lot of pattern playing as well. Yeah. And there, you can see I'm taking advantage of the tube amp. It has a real nice low end, and those chords are really bright and pop out. There's definitely a different sound than my previous albums because of that amp. And you can definitely hear it throughout each track. About is because of that amp I could play a little louder, but it's super quiet. It's super quiet, I mean, as far as noise from the amps goes, so super quiet, but louder and more punchy, like that kind of chord, right? Okay, let's fast forward to the 556 mark. There I'm having fun with the really long delays. Yeah, there's on the soloing, you can really hear that amp. There you can really hear that amp. Okay, so that's volume 279, and I'm very curious with that tube amp versus the Albion amps. I love the Albion sound, and those are my go-to amps. They have been since album 200. And we're now at album 279, and that's all been Albion amps. They just have a super smooth sound, and part of that is because it's a hybrid amp. It's not really a tube amp. It's not quite a solid-state amp either, whereas the PV is definitely a tube amp. And I'm very curious to see if having no Albions and just two PV Classic 30 tube amps, what the sound differences would be, especially with I would change the EQ as I mentioned there, and I would also, it loses because it doesn't have that echo that the Albions have, so it's kind of a dryish sound, but very clear. So I don't know, I'm going to experiment with that and see. Definitely changes my playing, affects my playing, and the musical ideas as well. In a way, it's a little bit harder because I definitely relied on the Albions when I was doing the pattern playing, that they would sit well in the mix, you know, and kind of in the background, kind of washed out. Whereas here, they're in your face, you know, they're real bright and forward, and that's fine for kind of more aggressive sounding tracks than real smooth, though it can do that. So it really affected my playing quite a bit. So going forward, we'll see, you know, what we'll do with that. You know. All right, see you next time. Bye.